You pull your chair that way and then pull this chair. No, we all want to face each other so we can hear each other and see each other.
Oh, closer.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be much.
You don't have to sign up, but a lot of people have expressed interest.
Good.
So.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
Yeah, it just takes some time.
Oh, it was fun. That's always my time.
Yeah, no, we don't have much time.
We got
When we
time.
were 20, we had
time.
plenty of time. Now we don't have any time.
I got plenty of time.
We got
That's all
time.
we got.
We're good.
Thank goodness, yeah. Are you coming to Tachi? Are you coming to Tachi? Yes, I am. Just getting moved in. Yeah, me too. And I signed up for the nutrition class. Oh, I hadn't heard about that. Same day. There is a program.
Yes. So.
After.
No.
See, that's what I love about these bottles. That's what I love about these bottles. They're so thin and flimsy that you hold it tight to get the top off.
Absolutely.
And when the top comes off, all the water comes out the top.
My husband gets so mad every time that happens.
Everything's done for the provider. See,
Yep.
the skinny plastic is cheaper than the thick plastic.
So they're making more money.
And while we're at it, how you supposed
Okay,
to,
yeah, I'm sorry.
how
So
you supposed to get into the can?
the Tai Chi is at noon. We do book club and recommendation group at 2, and then the nutrition class is at 4.
Wow.
So if you come on,
3 things.
yeah, if you come on book club day, you can come and stay all day, and we also have
You gonna feed us?
yeah, the nutrition class has food.
Do they?
Yeah,
So that'll be a snack.
yeah, there you go. And we always have snacks at book club. Come on. We got cookies over there. We got iced tea. We got good times. Good times. So. Oh, is somebody else coming in?
Certainly hope so.
I hope so too.
We probably didn't read the book and stuff.
My mom could not make it today, but she's
okay?
yeah, she's okay. She had something else going on, but she did provide me her opinions to share on her behalf. So what did y'all think of the book?
I didn't like it. I couldn't understand it. And it's all two people, two smart people exchanging or whatever. And what I hate about books that don't have chapters.
Oh yeah.
I like to break down and then rest of all, conclude with one chapter, then on. It was just on and on and on and on.
Yeah, it was what it basically was it stayed in the moment. So there really wasn't, the plot was kind of hard to find. There wasn't plot, it was just interaction between it was what he called it a love story. And it's what it is, it's the mother and the son trying to help the daughter.
Yeah.
Who's all strung out, she's having a nervous breakdown. And they can't quite figure out how to help her. But in the meantime, you got all this irrelevant conversation going on. But to me, that was interesting because it's kind of like watching a movie, like these movies, the shows they make now, these virtual, where they follow the Kardashians and they follow these people, and it's interesting to see people what they do all through the day. But I can see where, people that are looking for a beginning and a middle and an end, it's hard to find it in this book.
What did you think?
I agree. I almost put it down. There was just too much description going on, like the medicine cabinet.
Okay.
Yeah, he did take off.
And the living room.
Okay.
But then I finished it, and I Googled it and read the reviews, and I kind of know now what they were trying to say, or what he was trying to say.
Yeah, in the writing classes, they tell you not to make lists. And he did that 2 or 3 times. He did it like you said, the medicine cabinet, he did it in the living room. And then when he went into the Seymour's room with all the books, he did it there.
He couldn't stop himself.
Yeah, so he threw that rule out the window.
And she was really the same way, because of the way she acted when she met her friend for the football game, you know. I mean, she just went on. Of course, I realized she was having problems, but that wasn't fair to him either.
Okay. I feel this is really interesting. It's interesting that everybody likes different books, because the last couple of book clubs, I felt like I was the downer because I didn't like the book that everybody else liked. I love this book.
You
Yeah,
did?
I did too. It's my favorite book.
Yeah, and well, it was one of my dad's favorite books, so I've read it before, and I just very strongly related to the character of Franny. And I liked the descriptions and the lists. One of the comments that my mom had was that she didn't like, like the stuff in the medicine cabinet or the like brand names or things that kind of tie it to a specific place. I did find that interesting because it kind of added to the atmosphere. I felt like of what they were going through. I don't really like lists of brand names and stuff like that when it's a historical fiction book, because then it feels like they're trying too hard. But when it's contemporary to when it was written, then it seems more real.
Well, one thing about the list is, when they make a long list like that, the reader gets to kind of have some insight into the people. Like all the books in Seymour's room that he rattled off, like that, this philosophy book and this Eastern Guide book and this book over here, you kind of get a feeling, an insight into the guy that owned the books. Same thing in the medicine cabinet, the ring, the class ring with the chipped onyx. You got the information that she'd gone to graduated from some school, and all the laxatives, and you get a whole medical history of somebody by looking in their medicine cabinet. You know if they have dentures. You know if they have a lot of headaches. If they got 8 kinds of aspirin, they got headaches. And so it kind of.
But who goes around looking in people's medicine cabinets?
Yeah.
Oh, people do. People do.
My favorite story is the people that have open houses.
Hello.
And the drug people.
Wanna come over here?
But I like to have a place to put my coffee and stuff.
Well, I can't. I'm going to have trouble hearing you.
Yeah, we have trouble hearing you.
You can set your coffee up here.
Yeah, I can move over and we can have these 2 chairs.
You can move on. Sit down and stop us.
But the main thing about the book, it took me years to figure out, was how Christ was the fat lady on the porch. At the end, it took me years to figure that out.
I didn't know.
Well, that was at the end,
I did think that, a couple people said that they didn't finish the book, but I did think, it's only 200 pages, so even if you hate it, you can get through it. Miss Katie, what did you think of the book?
Oh, I didn't get it at all, and I skimmed it and didn't understand it. The one comment that I will share is that watching that movie, well, even when I tried to read the cover things, synopsis, unfortunately, it was written by the author, who also was not helpful. So in the movie, my Salinger year, they do mention, some people were talking in a coffee shop, and they said, well, I like Franny and Zooey better, because it was about a literary agency that was representing J.D. Salinger in the 90s.
What was the name of it?
My Salinger Year, and you can get it here at the library.
It's a video.
A movie, yeah, dramatic. It's about a young woman who worked there, and she did have some contact with J.D. Salinger. And so I like I won't expound on that because that's not what it's about, but that's my comment, thank you.
All right. I was looking for some discussion questions and I didn't really find any ones that I liked, but there's a couple here. So in the Zoe section of the book, the narrator is their brother Buddy. I just assumed that he was also the narrator, like the unspoken narrator of the Franny section. But did y'all assume that also?
I didn't think about it.
Who was the narrator of the?
It's not said, but one of the discussion questions was, do you think that Buddy was also the narrator of the Franny section?
Oh, did you think so?
I just assumed so because I was reading it as one book, but it was published as two different short stories.
Oh.
Well, he did say somewhere at the beginning that Buddy was the alter ego of the author.
Right.
And remember, Buddy was the writer,
Mm-hmm.
and so on and so forth. So it was kind of Salinger's viewpoint, using Buddy to announce it or narrate it.
Right. Okay, this I thought was interesting. When it was first published, a lot of readers thought that Franny was pregnant, and that was why she fainted. And Salinger did not like that interpretation, and so he wanted to say that that was not what was going on. But we here at Book Club subscribe to the death of the author, so what Salinger says isn't necessarily true. Do we think Franny was pregnant?
I did.
That never thought.
How about you?
Yeah, maybe, because she was so, and the nervous breakdown.
And Franny and Zooey are brother and sister, is that it?
Yeah.
Well, the fact that she was fainting all the time, I could see where that somebody might think she was pregnant. But, she was also not eating. Remember, she was just eating cheeseburgers and Cokes. And she wasn't sleeping good. She was up in the middle of the night driving around the campus. And, there was more going on. I think if she'd been pregnant, there'd have been a hint there somewhere. And I didn't see it. But I can see where somebody might think she was pregnant,
Oh, all right. We have somebody joining from Google Meet.
Can we see him up there, or how does that work?
We have a different device up here, so I'm just gonna have to put the phone up here. Hi, would you like to introduce yourself? Hi. So what did you think about Franny and Zooey?
I want to hear what everybody else thinks about Franny and Zooey.
Can you turn it up a little?
I can try.
And what's her name and where does she live? Darien?
Yes, ma'am. Could you say your name again and also where you live?
My name is Angie Irby, and I live in Darien on Black Island.
All right. Welcome.
Angie.
Angie.
She lives on Black Island.
All right. So we were just discussing that some readers thought that Franny was pregnant, and Salinger says that was not true, but we can have our own interpretations. I was of two minds, because like on the one hand, just because a woman is feeling sick doesn't mean she's pregnant. There's lots of things that could cause someone to feel sick. But on the other hand, I kind of want her to be, just because I'm very emotionally invested in this character, and I want good things for her.
Yeah,
I want her to start her own family, kind of break away from what her family did to her.
The reader is automatically on her side because the guy, I can't remember his name, but he's kind of a snippy, kind of arrogant, kind of,
Mm-hmm.
he has no sympathy or consideration. I couldn't believe it was she fainted or something, or when she came back. And he says, well, after we put you up in the house, I'll sneak up the back stairs because it's been a long time between drinks. And the poor girl just fainted, and he's trying to get her in,
It was all about him.
line up some action.
Yes. Yes.
And when she was talking, and when they were talking, and she was so all strung out about stuff, and he pops up and says, boy, I can see this is going to be some kind of weekend. You know, I mean, he wasn't sympathetic
And
at
he
all.
was so disappointed because he was gonna miss all the goings on because of her.
Yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't a very nice person.
No.
No, he was a little conceited, a little arrogant, a little full of himself.
One thing I was wondering, just to help me briefly try to understand it, if anybody wants to participate, just say if you liked it or not, and then why or why not, real briefly. Can we do that? If anyone who wants to do that?
Yeah, that's right.
We'll start with this young lady.
Say that question again?
Did you like it or not? And did you like it? And then why or why not?
You mean the entire book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I didn't like it,
Okay.
but then I finished it and thought about it, and I do kind of like it.
Okay, and then why? Why?
Because it has a good message to it. Do your own thing. Don't worry about that stupid professor. Don't worry about that audience in the theater. You do your best.
Yeah,
You worry about yourself.
Okay, and then how about you?
Well, I read his other book, I didn't know, and I didn't like it. So I had a idea that I wasn't gonna like this book when I read it, and just to get it over with, and I still didn't like it.
Okay, and why not?
Because there was no story, it was
Okay.
done.
Okay, that was me too. I couldn't get it.
And that's like I also said that I like books that have chapters.
Okay.
And I tend to get so involved that I didn't like how he was treating his mother, you know, I just wanted to slap him.
Right. So it drew you in enough for you to have a strong opinion on that.
Yeah.
Would you like to share, Matt? If you liked it, or why or why not?
I imagine I haven't decided.
Miss Angie, let's go to you. I'm afraid of forgetting you over there. I'm sorry.
Oh, please, don't worry about that. I honestly have not quite finished the book, but I'm reading it because I'm thrilled that you're doing this book club. I like J.D. Salinger, and he is weird to me, but in a good way. And part of me says, how did this author become so famous and so popular? Because he's so offbeat, and his sense of humor is so bizarre.
Amen.
But I found myself laughing out loud repeatedly at times, but often, unfortunately, it was under heartbreaking circumstances, which is exactly why I think people like him, because he understands ironies, and as an author, I think he took his own path. He's very creative / original in his terminologies and his words, and so I do want you all to tell me what happened. I'll read the book anyway, but I'm just as interested in the style and the content of the writing as I am in the outcome of the book.
There's really not an outcome. I mean, it's not
There
like,
is an outcome.
okay, all right, there's an outcome. What's the
I mean,
outcome?
she's having a nervous breakdown. He tells her the secret of the fat lady, and all of a sudden she understands, and she's not having a nervous breakdown. I mean, she's resolved. So her crisis is over, and she goes right to sleep, happy as a clam in mud.
Okay, I didn't think that was a resolution, but that's okay.
Okay, well,
We're here to have
I agree
different
with you
opinions.
Angie, I agree with you that the thing I liked about it best, well, first of all, if you read his big book, it's Catcher in the Rye.
I read it.
Yeah, and this is a completely different style, not completely different, but it's more insightful. His insight, and you talk about he jacks you around. The scene in the bedroom with his mother is hilarious. And then he goes right back to where she's crying, and he looks up and sees her crying, and he says, "I'm sorry, Franny, I'm sorry." And he just goes from tearing your heart out one second to have you laughing on the floor the next second. The scene where he says to his mother, "You know, when I'm having problems, I just invite people into the bathroom and we just all work it out," because the mother would come in there when he was taking a bath and wouldn't leave, you know. And, oh, it's just, and the writing especially, that's what got me. And it's in the moment, and you see so many facets of everything. And all the characters, even the brothers and the father, you know exactly how they are. With just 2 or 3 or 4 sentences of each one of them. You know, the brother, the priest, you know how he is. You know how the father dodges everything. I mean, he just, and you know how Buddy is, because Zoe paints a picture of Buddy pretty bad, the way he and Seymour jacked him around as kids. And it's just, to me, it's just an amazing book. It's just, I read it once every 2 or 3 years, if not more than that. It's just fascinating to me. So that's why I like it. I like the writing. I like the characters. I like the way he stays in the moment, and it's just a progression from one thing to the next. Even the trivial things seem to have a meaning in the overall plot, and it just, I'm just amazed at it. And his other stuff, you know, I don't know, but to me, this is his opus, his masterpiece. And it's just an amazing book to me.
Does he write more about this family?
Yes, it's a whole series. I have not read any of the other books about the family, but I know they're out there.
Well, supposedly he had 13 novels written about the Glass family, and they've never been released by his heirs, and I can't imagine why, because they'd sell like hotcakes. But they're
Well, I think
still
there was so
under
much
the control of
controversy
the
about
heirs.
catching the rhyme of it. Maybe that turned people off to his other books.
That could be. So I did like this book a lot. I strongly identified with the character of Franny. I had read it before because this book was one of my dad's favorites, and he gave it to me, and I read it, and so I have a bit of an emotional attachment to it because I associate it with my dad. But I also strongly relate, particularly to Franny. Out of curiosity, are anyone else's here parents, teachers, and or writers?
So what again?
Were any of your parents teachers and or writers?
No, were yours?
Yes. I feel like there. I was just thinking about that because I was feeling that how strongly I relate to Franny is I feel like this is a very child of teachers experience.
And why, in a nutshell, why is that?
To sort of grow up having this like simultaneously idealized and also kind of negative view of like academic life, and it's like if your parents are teachers, then by the time you even get to college, you're like over it. You're like, I know how the sausage is made. I'm like over it.
You have to remember that she was.
But that's not what happened to Franny because
Yeah.
her parents were not.
Is what happened though.
Unless
Buddy
she
and
got it from
Seymour
those two
were
older
teachers.
brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy and Seymour were her and Zoe's teachers.
Yeah.
They took over the job when they were young, and Franny had all this stuff, all this learning from them. And Zoe said they turned us into freaks. They laid too much on them too soon. And Zoe handled it one way, but Franny got in college, and all of a sudden she looks around, she's got all this knowledge, and she looks at the real world and sees the conflict.
Mm-hmm.
There's an unresolved conflict there, and she sees the world as shallow, like everybody goes through an existential, you know, everybody has to look up one day and say, boy, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And that was her problem. So she's having a nervous breakdown because She can't rectify what she learned about wisdom and life and everything Seymour and Buddy crammed into her. And then she goes to college and sees nothing but shallowness and pretension and money, and it's all doesn't mean anything. And she can't reconcile her life with the real world, her life of learning and wisdom with the world that's shallow and crummy. And I look out the window and see a shallow, crummy world every day, you know. But that's what caused her breakdown. And plus she was beautiful, and she was on the kids show, so she was smart.
They were all
So, you know, she had a lot of things that are positive that are right, and her turned out to be negative, you know, or could be made negative. You know, beauty's a hard mistress. Money's a hard mistress. Intelligence is a hard mistress.
I didn't look at
Can
the
I
book
ask
from
a
that
question?
standpoint.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Here's my question, even though I have not totally finished the book. I understand, to me, it's that Buddy and Seymour thought that their parents' teachings were so wrong, and then it turns out, in my understanding, the kids would have been better if they had stayed with that, maybe on that track, instead of going Buddy and Seymour's way. I mean, or maybe the point is that it's all in vain. But there's this style of teaching, which the parents tried to instill, and then there is Buddy and Seymour's style, which was completely different. But clearly they were already totally IQ out the ceiling, and they were all participants in It's a Wise Child. So they were already gifted. So I think, to me, the message so far is you could go off the tracks no matter what you've been taught.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
So please, someone expound on that, please.
That's not my exception. The way I looked at it is they were searching for something spiritual.
Yeah, that's what it
And
was.
that's where they say that's where it all began to turn around.
Yeah.
Because when they read the book, and the reason why that book that they were discussing, the way,
The Way of the Pilgrim.
yeah, the way of the pilgrim, it's back in the news now. And I was wondering if they say it's a movie. I wonder if you saw it. I haven't seen it. But
Oh, that is interesting.
I've heard of Pilgrim's Progress, but not The Way of the
no,
Yeah. Well, he was accused of, or some of the critics said, well, this is a book about religion. He said, no, it's not about religion. That's the plot. The theme is a love story. It's love between family members.
I can see
Yeah,
that.
but the thing was, once Zoe presented Seymour's fat lady about shining the shoes to the fat lady, and then that rang a bell with Franny. She said he said the same thing to me. He said be funny for the fat lady. Now they're on common ground. They got a common denominator. And then when Zoe explained who the fat lady was, that clicked with Franny. And she now resolved the spiritual with the temporal. With all this wisdom she'd learned as a kid, and all the world outside the window that you have to live in and put up with, then she could reconcile. She knew who Christ was. That he didn't say it like that, but that was the crux of it. Every man, you gotta have, and it goes back to his speech about her in the theater. You know, do it for yourself. Do it because you love it. You gotta be true to yourself. And that was the reconciliation. And once he explained who the fat lady was, she knew who the fat lady was, and her religion just fell right into place. Because Christ is in the fat lady. Every fat lady has Christ. Christ is everywhere. Christ is in every person. All you got to do is find him.
I don't espouse religion.
No, it's not religion.
No, what I'm saying
It's
is,
back to spiritualism.
yeah, the spirituality
Religion's
of it.
different.
We all have to be comfortable with who we are.
Yeah, but a lot of people aren't.
I agree with that, but that's okay.
You gotta make peace with yourself if you're gonna make
And
that
don't judge others.
Exactly. And then to me,
And that's what he was doing. He was trying to get her to make peace with herself.
yeah, but
so
she
could
was
go on with her life.
trying to me, she was trying to measure up to the one that her brothers that were ahead of her, compare herself to them. And you see it. I'm looking at it from a different perspective.
Well,
when
that's
you
the
look at
beauty of it, every perspective.
yeah, when you look at it from the fact that, and I guess me being a mother of two children, that both of them were gifted in their own right. The oldest is artistic, and the other is considered gifted. There is a pull and a need that you have to meet for each one that's different, but they're their own people, without imposing any expectations on them, just allowing them to get to where they need to be by themselves. And that's when I look at the book, and when I was like, oh no, not, first I thought at the first couple of pages, when she was talking about her boyfriend and what he wanted her to be, that she resented him because that's not who she wanted to be, but she was, I guess, so accustomed to doing what other people really wanted her to do, or be who other people want her to be, that she was not comfortable in herself. And then when she got that book, it made her change her perspective.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that book was her, that was something she could grab onto. That was something she could relate to. That was her temporary anchor to get her away from all the pretension of college and all the pretension of the theater. Now she had something solid, the Pilgrim book. And she took the Jesus prayer to heart. She's saying the Jesus prayer all the time, trying to get that inner eye and the heart lined up, and that, but the Jesus prayer wasn't working. That's what Zooey recognized. He says, you want to do the prayer fine, but there's some problems with it. And he's trying to explain it to her, and she's being defensive. She says, I like it. So he had to get through to the Jesus prayer. You know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. He recognized the Jesus prayer wasn't helping her. And he had to somehow, and he kept trying to badmouth the Jesus prayer. She kept being defensive, saying, no, you don't attack my prayer. And then when she finally broke down and he left the room, that's when he came up with the idea of going into Seymour's bedroom and calling, saying he was Buddy on the phone to give her a different perspective. Because she was against Zooey because he was against the prayer. But Buddy didn't know anything about the prayer. Buddy was just calling to see what was going on. So that's why he impersonated Buddy, to give a different viewpoint to Franny. And then once Franny realized it was Zooey, then the game was off. Then they had to get down to brass tacks. And that's when he got into when you were in the theater and you say you're going to quit, and we saw you up there. And now he's got her emotionally, because that's her life as a theater. Now he's got her emotionally. He's got her attention. Then he went to the what do you call it? He went to the fat lady as an illustration. He went to the fat lady, Seymour's fat lady, as an illustration. Then she got that. And once he said, the fat lady is Christ is the fat lady, then she got that, and she was cured, just like that. She was cured. Everything fell in place. She was no more having a nervous breakdown. She understood life. She understood the theater. She understood herself. And everything was fine. She went right to sleep.
Okay. I didn't think that she was resolved that clearly, but
Well, she wouldn't have gone to sleep if she was still worried.
I go to sleep every night when I'm worried.
I don't think she was anxious, but
I don't think she cried for 3 days. Well, I don't know.
Well, that's. I did kind of want to go back to Miss Angie's point about their education, because I thought it was very interesting that I didn't think that the family were necessarily that different from anyone else, but the education that they had been provided and the life that they had been trained for, that they had been, I don't want to bias the conversation by using the word exploited. They had been used as child performers from very early on, and that had shaped who they were.
In what way were they child performers?
They were on a children's quiz show, and they were like champions on the
Okay,
radio.
so it had an
Well,
academic
yeah,
bent.
but the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Remember, the mother and father were vaudevillers. They were performers.
Exactly.
So naturally, the kids are going to be performers.
Yes, but that they had been raised in that from very early childhood. It was all they had ever known, and it really shaped them. That they were never, Franny even said, that she was never not performing. And I think especially because Zoe and Franny were the youngest too, that they had seen their older siblings go through this. The expectations had been laid for them. They were being educated by their parents and their older siblings, and they had the expectations and their role laid out for them when they were,
Well, Buddy never even finished college.
right? And maybe that was kind of his.
They weren't driven by, academia.
But he still grew up as a child performer. He still grew up with
Well, that
those.
doesn't mean that your expectations through the rest of your life are going to be to perform.
I mean, he did grow up to be a writer and a teacher. So, I mean, maybe by not going to college himself, he was kind of rebelling against those expectations. But I
Well,
think
he
it
was
still
rebelling
shaped.
against Seymour because Seymour had his PhD, at the age of 18 or something. Buddy said, God, I can't keep up with that.
Right.
So he just went right into writing, and apparently he had some success at it, or he wouldn't have been the writer in residence of the college.
Right.
And the priest, he was all obviously educated. You got to go to seminary or wherever Catholics go. So he was educated, but he went a different direction, about as far as performing as you can get. I don't think a preacher, well, come to think of it, most preachers are performers.
You're right. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying
When they're
that
the pulpit.
they went into performance or academia as adults. I'm just saying that being constantly trained to perform and having the expectations laid out for them in early childhood shaped who they became. And I think it was interesting that this story was written in 1955, and then, and harkening back to earlier events, when those types of mass media performers were relatively less common, relatively newer. And I was thinking,
Because of television.
right.
But they were pretty well known. I mean, there was a few like Howdy Doody, I Love Lucy. The few that were there were very well known, very popular. Because there was a few.
Yes, there obviously were child stars, but I was thinking of like kids today who are like Instagram kids and TikTok kids who are growing up, whose parents put them out there to perform, to sort of create the family's brand, who are growing up under that kind of scrutiny and expectations. That was something else I could relate to.
Can I ask you this question to you? Why did the author write the book?
When you think about it, the stuff that goes on with social media now, with everybody, getting on Twitter and arguing with somebody over here, the conservative, or arguing with somebody over here, and they argue back and forth. And it's almost like the kids being on the Wise Guy show with answering questions, you know, they've got an audience, everybody's got an audience.
Yeah, and I mean, especially I think people who sort of grew up that way because they know that there's a way that they're supposed to present themselves. There's a way they're supposed to perform, and
So, what I'm getting is that, or I'm guessing, because when I watch a movie or read a book or whatever, I always ask myself, why did they write this? So, maybe it was, what do you think, what was the purpose?
I know that Salinger was at sometimes very interested in spirituality and philosophy. So I think maybe he was, I'm just guessing, that maybe he was latching on to some of those spiritual and philosophical dimensions that Franny and Zooey were talking about, like the differences and similarities between Buddhism and Christianity, or what it means to live those philosophies in your daily life. That's just my guess.
Yeah, well, he was into Eastern philosophy, Eastern religion.
Yeah, and I thought that was interesting that some of those spiritual through lines across different religious traditions, like repetitive meditation, and like it's almost like multiple people sort of independently came up with this idea of how to reconcile your spirit with your body. Miss Angie, I keep forgetting about you over there. I'm so sorry. Why do you think Salinger wrote the book?
And that's what I'm going back to look at some ideas. But please don't feel that I'm left out. If I have something that I want to add to the conversation, I will pipe in.
All right.
But I'm fascinated to hear everyone else, and I do think that there's a huge spiritual element. And since I haven't finished the book, I cannot say what exactly I think it is.
Let's see. Do I have any other questions here?
Well, one reason he wrote it, or at least the motive behind Franny, was the woman he married, that he had 2 kids by, he took her away from the guy that he modeled. What am I trying to say? What was the guy's name? Franny's boyfriend's name?
Lane.
Lane, yeah. So his wife was going with a guy that had Lane's personality. And Salinger took her away from him, but he depicted Lane as her former boyfriend. And that's where some of that vehemence and some of that hostility that he implanted in Lane came from. So that was kind of the backstory, I guess, or the background of how Franny got started. Of course, Franny was not anything like his wife. His wife didn't have nervous breakdown, but that was the scene in Salinger's mind as far as Lane went. I guess I'm saying that right.
I was interested in some of the other questions that you.
Pardon?
Oh, yeah, I printed off some questions. I didn't really like any of these questions. I searched a little while to find the questions that I liked, but let's see. All right, we talked about Buddy being the narrator. All right, Franny opens with Lane rather than with the protagonist. All right, we were just talking about Lane. What is the effect of the choice to open from Lane's point of view?
What do you expect? What from Lane's?
What is the effect in the story of opening the story from Lane's point of view instead of Franny's point of view?
That's interesting. I never thought of that.
May I say?
Yeah.
I think all about the arrangements, the locations, the appearances, the people. He is very much in the world, and Randy's not there. He's not interested in their conversations aren't even on the same plane right off the bat, and her concerns and her illness is not a concern to Lane at all, clearly. So when you open the book and you think, how can these two even be a couple? That's my first thing. And within the first chapter or so, I thought, there's nothing really there to me.
Yeah, it did seem like their relationship was kind of forced a little bit. Because when she wrote the letter, I love you, I love you, I love you. And then she said, you know, and then when he was in the bar and she went to the bathroom, he looked around being just in the right place with the right girl, you know, and he's got this kind of self-satisfied look on his face. And yeah, you're right, they were on two different levels. And I think she was.
Great point, and that is just before they got back together, she had written that letter. Maybe she was on his level, and they were thinking alike before the book opens.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, she was on his level when she wrote the letter, but by the time she got to the restaurant on the train, she had gone into the Pilgrim book and she was looking for something else. And Lane was still the college guy, you know, being the college, you know, conceit, you know, basically shallow and fake. He was just kind of a phony. Matter of fact, that's what Zoe called him. Zoe called him a charm boy. You know, phony, just putting up pretension and wearing the right clothes and going to the right school and, you know, all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I thought it was more of the social expectations aspect that Franny and Lane were kind of fulfilling the roles expected of them. That they were the kind of couple that, you know, were of this sort of the same socioeconomic status, and they were both sort of high achieving college students. So of course people think they should be together, whether or not they actually have anything in common or actually like each other.
It looked good on paper.
Right.
Yeah,
that they were kind of together fulfilling social expectations. And Lane was okay with that. He was like perfectly like, yes, I have this good looking girlfriend and everyone thinks well of me because look at this, you know, hot girl I landed.
I wrote the fancy Flaubert paper.
Yes. And so he was like, yes, I'm great and I have a great girlfriend to show for it. But Franny was not on board with that, and that she was on a different wavelength, and she was looking, I think that her kind of throwing herself into the way of the pilgrim and the Jesus prayer was just that she had reached such a level of frustration with the social expectations around her that she was that everything her whole life, she was the youngest child, she was the baby, she was the baby girl, she was a baby girl child performer in a family of child performers. You know, she never had a chance to be her own person. And I think the cumulative stress of all of that just made her so disgusted with the whole status seeking, expectations, fame seeking, pretentiousness all around her that she was.
Yeah, she looked up one day and said, you know, this isn't it, you know, what I'm involved with.
Then she was, and that cumulative stress propelled her to go the radically opposite, like to go too far in the other direction of being completely spiritual and ascetic and
Dependable.
yeah, and just devoted to prayer. And then Zoe was kind of telling her like you can't just be an ascetic. You have to live in the world and like see Jesus in the fat lady. And then like if you want to be spiritual, you also have to live in the world. That was how I interpreted it.
There's a practical side and an aesthetic side. Like life should be lived from the inside out, according to some philosophies, but it also needs to connect on certain
You still got to get along with your neighbors.
That reminds me of Salinger himself. From what I know, I mean, the movie I saw, the other movie called Rebel in the Rye, and that perfectly describes him because he's a rebel, he doesn't want to conform, he's got all these issues, but ironically, he's got one of the best-selling novels of all time, and he goes about the success in the non-traditional way.
Yeah.
It shows that in the movie, which is why I did enjoy that movie so much, because he was eschewing the regular ways for an author to go. Like he didn't want it to be I don't know what the word is, but put into chapters in a magazine. He didn't want this, he didn't want that. And they wanted him to write more novels or publish them, and he didn't want that. And yet he got all the success, everybody knows his name, but he did it in a non-traditional way. Plus the substance of whatever he was writing was about non-traditionality. So there's a lot of irony there, to me, for Salinger.
It appears to me that we all in some way rebel, find our way of rebelling against the norm. And what I found with entertainment is that art often depicts life. And so it's easy to change my persona on paper as opposed to how I actually live. I can be that disguise on paper and present what I want you to see as opposed to who I really am. And to me, it was, I guess, because of mental health issues and the world that we live in now has formed my thinking toward about this book is that at some point in our lives, we all get to a point where we start searching for purpose. And then when the purpose don't fit what we think it is, if we've got that mindset, then there's conflict.
Yeah.
Then it's how we gonna get to the point of how we resolve conflict. Do we use the conventional skills or tools, or do we make our own?
Well, it's funny you said that. The writer that does the alter ego of the character in the book, he's really writing about himself, but he's writing himself the way he wished he could be, or the way he wants to be. And everybody's got a game face. Everybody's got a face they put to people in public or people they don't know well. You get to know somebody long enough and close enough, that game face melts away. That's why husbands and wives fight like cats and dogs sometimes. That game face has been eliminated because now you're familiar with each other. You know each other's personalities, and that game face disappears. And that's true in the whole situation. Franny's game face, so to speak, was the college girl with the boyfriend and all that, and then she got to a stage where her real face was showing. She was having to confront life, like you said. Now it's a conflict, and her game face, her public face, disappeared as she's trying to get into the real Franny, become the real Franny, and not the one that everybody noted that she's expected to be. Yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what happened to her. She disposed of her game face, trying to find her real face, and the conflict was what had her crying on the couch all day long. and seeking the Jesus book, trying to find the answer in the Jesus book. And Zoe, being outside of her, could see what was going on, but Zoe was not exactly a diplomatic kind of guy.
And by her being the youngest of all the children,
Yeah, that had
I
something.
think that she, the expectation of what they expected her to do, weighed on her. And then the mere fact that the brother had committed suicide, that tells, to me, that would have said, well, if I'm going to base or try to put my life based on that, then something was wrong there. And it appears that Zoe, he wasn't happy. So why would I want to walk in y'all footsteps when there is all this chaos in your own life?
Yeah, Zoe had his problems too. He had an ulcer. He said he was furious all the time. He when they came up with a good play at the office, he's the one that put a wet blanket on the whole, and everybody's bummed out after 30 minutes of listening to him. So Zoe was not didn't get through childhood and get to be an adult that's perfectly adjusted either. So
Yeah, I think that all of the children, like in some way, the expectations that were put on them as children, sort of shaped them so profoundly that they couldn't live up to the expectations because Seymour was the oldest.
Yeah, look at Seymour.
Yeah, he was the oldest.
And he was the leader of the pack, the wise one, and he blew himself away. He couldn't deal with it.
Yeah, so he was like, obviously the oldest child has, all the expectations placed on them, and he died young. And so that, sometimes if a family member dies young, they're kind of remembered as idealized, but there's this dichotomy where like he's idealized because he died young, but also because he died young, like he failed to live up to the expectations. And then there was another brother who died in the war, so that, like, he wasn't the shining success story either. One of the brothers left to become a priest, so that's not a shining success story in the kind of status seeking world of the family. And then I don't remember what happened to the other two siblings. And then Zoe was kind of a not quite a failed actor, but like not a very successful actor, and he's miserable and angry and bitter and.
No, he was a successful actor.
Okay,
well, he was in high demand, and all that, making big money, and had a movie offer in France and all this kind of thing.
Okay.
So he was successful in acting, but he just felt he'd been turned into a monster, of a freak, as he put it, by Seymour and Buddy, cramming all that knowledge down their throats when they were barely old enough to assimilate it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be old. You have to have a mentor. You have to be old enough to understand these things. You can't understand things at 12 like you can at 25. That was his complaint. They took them too early and put too much knowledge in them when they didn't have the maturity to assimilate it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that they were kind of, that they were all sort of pushed into this learning and trying to integrate everything from early childhood, and none of them could really live up to those expectations.
The only normal one in the family, normal in the sense of an everyday person, was the daughter Boo Boo, who lived in the suburbs and had a husband and children, which is kind of the American standard. And all the rest of the family were unique or unusual. One's a writer, one's a PhD at 18, one's an actor, one's a priest, and Boo Boo was the only one that was normal. But you never saw Boo Boo. She wasn't.
Right, and she had also,
and she was in Europe, so she wasn't relevant.
Yeah, and because you never saw her, and I don't remember very much about her, but I think she kind of like dropped out of the public facing life, like you said, to get married and have children. And that I think I might have when we were talking earlier about the I don't want to say fan theory because that's not what you say about a real book. The literary interpretation that Franny was pregnant, and I was like, I don't necessarily think that that's true, but I want that for her. Like, I want her to have children and have a family that is not burdened by all of these performance and academic. Yeah, that's not burdened by all of these expectations. To just be a person and just be herself and have a family that is and I'm not to
That
say
she's not putting expectations.
right, and not to say that you have to have children. I mean, chosen family or whatever the case may be. I just want her to find her path in life. I want good things for Franny.
Could I please back up just a little bit about Boo-Boo?
Hmm.
I felt like the author was using that word Boo-Boo like it was supposed to be a mistake. So as if the rest of the family thought that what Boo-Boo did was the loser's way, or so totally predictable that it was not the same standard as higher education and acting and writing, that to have a family was to be not creative or not original is something that struck me, and I'd like everybody else's opinion on that.
Oh yeah, that's a great point. That she was almost literally almost the family failure.
Well, but she was probably named Boo Boo. That was probably the nickname from the time she was a child.
Right, but the author, the person who's writing the book,
Yeah,
may have
that's
had
true.
that
Yeah, why would he name
as
her
a
Boo Boo?
double intent.
That could be it. I don't know. I never thought about it. Makes sense. But she was the only one that wasn't in the spotlight, so to speak. I don't even remember. I don't think she was ever mentioned as being on the Wild Child, so it was always.
I think they said that every single kid was in It's a Wise Child.
Everyone.
Yes, that they all were. There was there were several lines in here that just were so funny to me. Just that were just very amusing to me. One of them was Franny's father offering her a tangerine, and her mother just finding that. Can you even believe that he offered her a tangerine? And the other one, and this might also be, as I said, I kind of have certain ways of projecting, but the part in Buddy's letter where he says that someone in his department was an Orientalist and smiled at him in that way that Orientalists do, that has amused me so much because of the way that teachers and academics will have like just highly specific ideas of people in highly specific departments that they will just say like it's the most understood thing in the world. Or like when Buddy was talking about his students writing, like he was teaching creative writing, and his students were writing short stories, and he was like, well, half of them will be about Pennsylvania Dutch lesbians who want to be writers.
Written in dialect.
Written in dialect. And it's like, that is so specific. But like that's the kind of things that people people who are sort of in the world of creative writing will say as just like they expect it to be completely understood. Like, oh, all those stories out there about Pennsylvania Dutch lesbians who want to be writers written in dialect.
And the handyman,
Yeah, and a handyman.
the lecherous handyman. Borrowed that from Franny, what's her name, Flannery O'Connor.
Yes. So those were just some of the things that I thought were funny.
So you related to it because of your background in academia, and you kind of connected with some of the viewpoints that they may have had.
Well, just like because I've spent a lot of time around teachers. Like I said, my dad was a teacher, and
So you could relate to that.
yeah, and I mean, I guess any line of work has very highly specific points of reference,
Yeah,
or like
they do.
things that the things that are said that are like taken to be understood or taken like it's the most known thing in the world. It's just very funny to me the way that like writers and like literature teachers say like, oh, you know, everybody knows all those stories out there.
It reminds me, just if I could share something about my experience in academia, I'll make it real quick. But I studied English at Case Western Reserve University for a while, and I got into science, specifically astronomy. And I spent a lot of time in the department. I took a lot of courses, and what do you call that, where you sit in, but you don't have to do the coursework? You audit, yes. And I found the whole culture to be very fascinating, with kind of an undercurrent of spirituality that people wouldn't just come out and talk about. So I wrote a short story based on it called The Dark Matter, because that was one of the abiding mysteries of the universe at that time. Maybe it still is. I haven't kept up with it. But then I wrote a play that was kind of based on the story, but took place afterward. And it turned into a farce, something was really funny to me and somebody else who read it. So I get that you know, that's what I was really picking up on, aside from my own personal interest in the subject, was the people and the culture and all those things. And so my play, The Dark Matter, I submitted to the Brunswick Actors Theater. And it's funny, and the lady really liked it. Her name is Linda. And of course, it hasn't been produced yet. I don't know if it will. I may have to take it with me when I move to Sarasota. But she did like it, and I feel like that was a great victory, that somebody on her level actually read the play and liked it.
Yeah, I hope they do.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I said, did you laugh? And she said, oh yeah. And what was interesting about it too was another friend, a lady I met at the Unitarian, was really steeped in academia. And she didn't like, I mean, she was offended, like, oh, you're saying this about academia. It's like, I wasn't putting down academia. I was looking at things the way these particular people look at it, you know. So it's interesting, you know, that she had that reaction.
Yeah, that actually sounds really interesting, because I don't know any astronomers, but I would imagine that like, yeah, they have their own like whole culture and things that they take for granted.
Well, just like the doctors do, and the lawyers do. And I was thinking about the name Boo Boo, and for the longest time, I thought Walker and Waker, the twins. Like I always, in my mind, I thought of those phonetically as definitions, like a walker walking and a waker that wakes up. And I finally realized is when she named the twins, she dropped the L. So Walker was one and Waker was the other. She just dropped the L to make them twins. So they were,
I couldn't figure it out.
and they didn't rhyme, you know, they didn't really have anything to do with being alive.
And your name's a child Boo Boo.
Yeah, she
Well,
dropped the L.
I assumed that they were mostly nicknames, because like Zoe was a nickname for Zachary,
Yeah.
and I assumed that Buddy was not his real name, but like I assume it was like one of those family nickname types of things.
Okay, well, could I make one other observation about the mother? The mother, in the conversation that she has with Zoe when he's in the bathtub, and it is hilarious to me, but what really strikes me is that she, as a parent, takes liberty with supposed to leave the bathroom, but she stayed in the bathroom. And so then he, you know, she gets after him for not being as respectful as a traditional relationship would be. But then she is not traditional with him in the way she's raised him and the way she interferes with his life.
Well, I think Zoe recognized that. He says, this is my private space, and you're not supposed to be in here. But you got to remember, this was a family emergency. Franny's going to pieces on the couch, and she had to talk to Zoe, whether he was in the bedroom, whether he was in the kitchen, whether he was in the bathroom. She had to talk to him, had to come up with some kind of bouncing ideas off of him to what to do with the child. She kept saying, I don't know what I'm going to do with that child. And of course, she didn't think Zoe was any help. She didn't think Buddy was any help. She didn't think anybody. All you children are no help, And she was getting at her wits' end. She didn't. And then, like everybody said, this is her baby. This is the baby of the family. And she's overly concerned, completely concerned. And she doesn't know how to help her. She's talking about going to a psychoanalyst, talking about this, talking about that. So I think that going into the bathroom she wouldn't have normally done, but under the circumstances, she had to talk to Zoe immediately, whether he was in the tub or not, and plus they had the curtain anyway.
So it's ironic, because on the one hand, they have these standards that people should adhere to, but on the other hand, she's crossing somebody's boundaries, so he probably meant that as a statement observation.
And when she said button your lip, after all, she's the mama, and she's going to be the mama till the day she dies, And she's going to tell him to button his lip, whether they're in a bus stop or a theater or anything else.
That's interesting. I didn't think that it was because it was an emergency. I mean, I guess I didn't think it was an emergency. I thought she was.
You don't think it's an emergency?
No, and I think she was just like that. I think she was just a meddling mother.
How can you say it wasn't an emergency? The daughter is left school. She's on the couch crying for 2 days. How can it not be an emergency?
That's like.
Thank you all.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's not that unusual, so.
Unusual.
It's not. It's not.
Well, I hope if I'm crying on the couch for 2 days, somebody thinks it's an emergency.
Well,
My thing is that she needed to talk to him, and that was the only way to do it.
Pat me on the head.
I can see my mama actually doing something like that. That if she needed to get my attention, and that was the only way that she thought she could do it, when the opportunity presented itself, she took it. I can understand that, because I probably would do the same thing myself.
But that was part of the love story between the family, trying to find out how to help the girl.
I can understand
the
that.
baby, whatever it is.
I can totally understand that.
Okay.
It wasn't the mom, the mama would be fine. I'd probably have some problem with somebody else coming in the bathroom, but not, mom.
Well, you don't get a sense of the father much in there.
No.
I like the fact that she clinked when she walked. She
knew
put
she
the
was
child
coming.
in her pockets.
Yeah.
yeah. I just thought she was very meddling, and I didn't think it was like I didn't get the impression that it was a unique situation. I got the impression that she just walked in on her kids in the bathtub. She just walk in wherever, say whatever, just like no kind of boundaries.
Well, she didn't just walk in. She knocked or did something. She announced herself. She didn't just stroll in and whip the curtain back and stare at new Zoe,
Okay. So she has one boundary, and it's the shower curtain.
Well, drastic times call for drastic
Did he ever get there?
I mean, drastic times call for drastic measures. You throw propriety out the window if it's an emergency. Not that you think it's an emergency. If there's a crisis, there was a crisis. And I think if the cop says, we got a rule that you can't. Okay, here's a good example. The sign says no swimming. some kid is drowning, do the adults stand there and watch him drown? No, they go and go swimming, whether the sign, to get the kid, whether the sign says not to go in or not. You know, you do what you have to do to throw the rules out the window to save the kid, you know.
We got some dark folks in the black hole.
I'm sure that's probably how she felt. She probably felt like it's a crisis. You got to do, that was probably her character motivation. Yeah.
And the husband is no help. His solution was to give her a tangerine.
I mean, the idea is it would get your mind off of what you're doing because it takes time to peel it, and then take off the pieces of the tangerine that you don't want to eat, and depending on how she was taught to eat it, I can see that.
Well, it's just like the idea of Franny being pregnant. If she hadn't been pregnant, if she had been pregnant and had a child, her whole world of attention would have been on that baby, and she wouldn't have worried anymore about any conflict or that baby would. She would be totally involved with raising that baby and loving that baby. What was going on outside wouldn't matter anymore.
Yeah, but that
actually that could have been a solution to her problem.
Not necessarily, because that
not necessarily.
that misplaced attention could have been disastrous.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It could have been worse if she'd had the baby, because her head still would have been screwed up. Now she's raising a baby with a screwed up head, and what's the baby's going to be screwed up?
That's true.
I don't think that's quite how it works, but.
I think we're overthinking it.
Hey,
That's what book club is for.
I was sorry I was late, because I really
Well, Andrew, I hope we've entertained you a little bit.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm glad that you came. I'm glad that everybody came. We're about to wrap up, but I did want to say next week we have recommendation group. Next week we have nutrition class.
Already decided.
We have recommendation group every month, though.
Well, didn't we decide on the 3 bottles or something?
Yeah. I'm just saying next week we have recommendation group.
But we already recommended something.
Yeah, but we do it every month.
Yeah, we don't need to do it because we already got it done.
But we do it every month.
We're doing it for the next month.
Yeah.
Well, the month after that.
We actually have one for the month after that. We're doing the Allison and Edward.
So put on your clothes. Well, I've got my clothes on. What do you mean put on?
Next week we have recommendation group. We also have, for those who want to participate, we have Tai Chi.
And that is
here at noon, and it's going to be a 6-week session starting next week.
Which day?
Thursday, June 1st.
Okay.
And we're going to have nutrition class. That is an 8-week session.
The Tai Chi starts at noon.
Yes.
What time? Nutrition.
4 o'clock. You can sign up at the desk.
We'll teach them how to walk.
And the nutrition class also, it's like a nutrition/cooking class. They have food. Next week we have recommendation group. The end of next month, I do not have the date in front of me, but the last Thursday of the month we are discussing The Lost Brothers by Jack L. Hay. Usually we get multiple copies of the book club book so that everybody can get one. This time we only have 1 copy on Libby and 1 physical copy to check out. So I am going to ask that if you get the physical copy, I would just ask you to just read it and bring it back so the next person can get it, just because we only have 1. I'm probably going to read it on Libby because I'm more amenable to the digital reading. But even on Libby, only 1 person at a time can have it checked out. So that it might be a little inconvenient, but it's pretty short, so it shouldn't take anybody too long to read it. And then we also already have our That's gonna be our June book. We have our July book lined up, which is the Alice Network. I do not remember the author. I believe it is Quinn. Is the author of the Alice Network, and we will have copies of that available also. And we should be able to get multiple copies of that. So I will see you next week at Recommendation Group and next month to discuss the Lost Brothers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, we leave the chairs right here?
That works.
Okay.